Listen to this special story. It's very, very interesting. You won't like to skip a beat. He confessed to a crime he didn't commit. It was supposed to be the happiest day of his life. On the morning of his 17th birthday, Martin Tankleff was just a normal high school kid in Long Island, New York. He had his whole life ahead of him, college, family, dreams. But before the day ended, Martin would be sitting in a cold interrogation room, accused of murdering the very people who raised him. The crime was a brutal stabbing of his own parents. The evidence was a confession he never truly meant to give. On September 7, 1988, Martin woke up to a nightmare. He walked into the hallway and found his mother, Marilyn Tankleff, lying unconscious, covered in blood. In another room, his father, Seymour, was barely alive, brutally attacked, barely breathing. Martin did what any terrified son would do. He called 911. He told the dispatcher exactly what he saw and pleaded for help. Police and paramedics arrived. His father was rushed to the hospital. Martin stayed behind with the detectives, thinking he'd be treated like a witness or victim. But he was wrong. Martin was taken to the station and placed in a room alone. He wasn't allowed to call a lawyer. He wasn't even allowed to call his relatives. Detectives began grilling him, asking over and over, "Did you get into a fight with your parents? Were you angry? What really happened in that house?" For hours, Martin denied everything. He was calm, confused, and scared. Then the detective told him that his father had regained consciousness at the hospital and had named Martin as the attacker. That wasn't true. Seymour was still unconscious. But Martin didn't know that. He started to question his own memory. He wondered, did I black out? Could I have done something without realizing it? He was a teenager. He trusted the police. And he broke. He said what they wanted to hear. Martin told the detectives a version of events not based on reality, but based on their pressure. He confessed to a crime he didn't commit. But even that confession made no sense. It didn't match the crime scene. There was no blood on Martin, no fingerprints, no motive. He even mentioned another man, Jerry Steuerman, who had bad blood with his father over a business deal. Still, police had what they wanted, a taped confession, and that was enough. Despite the confession's contradictions, despite the lack of physical evidence, the jury found Martin guilty of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 50 years to life in prison. 17 years old, locked away as a convicted killer, his future gone, his name destroyed, his remaining family disowned him, his friends disappeared, and the world moved on. But the story wasn't over. Years passed. Martin refused to give up. In prison, he educated himself. He studied law. He wrote letter after letter to anyone who would listen. Finally, a private investigator took interest. He looked deeper into the case, and what he found was shocking. Jerry Steuerman, the man Martin mentioned from the beginning, had a major motive. He owed Martin's father money, and they had argued days before the murder. Just after the crime, Steuerman faked his own death. He left a fake suicide note and disappeared, only to be found later living under a different name. Yet police never investigated him. The case against Martin began to fall apart. Witnesses came forward. New evidence emerged. People began asking why the real suspect was ignored. In 2003, Martin's legal team filed new appeals. They presented fresh evidence, questioned the original detective's tactics, and exposed how the confession was coerced. In 2007, after 17 years behind bars, Martin Tankleff's conviction was overturned. A judge ruled that the confession was unreliable and that Martin never received a fair trial. He walked out of prison a free man. But freedom doesn't erase the damage. His parents were gone. His youth was lost. His name had been dragged through the mud for nearly 2 decades. All because of a confession he was manipulated into giving. Today, Martin is not just a survivor. He's an advocate. He earned a law degree. He fights for others who were wrongfully convicted. He works to change interrogation laws, especially those that allow minors to be questioned without legal counsel. His story is a chilling reminder. Innocence is not always enough. The system doesn't always get it right. And one false confession can destroy a life. Martin Tankleff confessed to a crime he didn't commit, but he didn't let that define him. He turned his nightmare into a mission to make sure it never happens to someone else. Write your own opinion in the comment section.